I think we can all agree that the most unexpected announcement from WWDC 2023 was not the Apple Vision Pro headset, or the 15-inch MacBook Air, or even the new Mac Studio, all of which have been heavily leaked before the event. Instead, the most unexpected announcement was the new Mac Pro. And together with that new Mac Pro, Apple's Mac lineup is pretty strange. Not as confusing as it used to be, but still confusing for the majority of people. So let's take a look and see where Apple's lineup is right now and also where it is heading. If you're looking for a new desktop Mac, you have 4 options: the Mac Mini, the iMac, the Mac Studio, and the Mac Pro. The Mac Mini is by far the best overall desktop you can get for the money. As in, you can get a refurbished M2 Mac Mini for just $509, which would offer you an awesome level of performance for both regular users and also entry-level professionals. Like, this thing can handle basic to medium video editing, as well as photo editing and also other projects. So it is an awesome machine, especially for that price. Then if you spend a bit more, $1,300 or $1,100 refurbished, you get to the iMac, which hasn't been updated in more than 2 years, so it is still rocking the old M1 chip. And yes, whilst it looks beautiful and the screen is great, plus it also comes with all the accessories that you need, unlike the Mac Mini, because of that M1 chip, it is a no-go. Oh, and speaking of accessories, my mouse of choice for all of my Macs has always been Logitech's MX Master series, and the new MX Master 3S is now on offer from Best Buy, where you can get 20% off accessories with any hardware purchase. Check it out by using the link below, and while doing so, you would also be supporting the channel. So yeah, the iMac is not worth getting, at least not until we get the M3 variant, which according to Mark Gurman is expected to launch by the end of the year. The design will remain the same and so will the colors, but the performance will be increased by a pretty significant amount. For example, just by going from the M1 chip to the M2, a 15-minute 4K Final Cut project that would take 1 hour and 2 minutes to export on the M1 would only take 44 minutes on the M2. And in games, World of Warcraft, for example, averages 31 FPS on the M1 compared to 41 on the M2. And with the M3, I would expect these performance improvements to be even greater, mostly thanks to the switch to a 3nm manufacturing process. After all, the M2 was pretty much an M1 with more cores and a higher power draw. Even Mark Gurman said that the M2 was always designed to be a stopgap chip ahead of the bigger M3 update. So if you want an iMac right now, I would just wait until October or so for that M3 variant. Now, I quickly want to touch upon the iMac Pro. As most of you know by now, Apple has discontinued both the previous iMac Pro as well as the regular 27-inch iMac. So the only iMac size that you can buy right now is the 24-inch model, which is just too small for most creatives and also lacks the power that a lot of professionals need, even with that upcoming M3 chip. Well, there have been multiple sources pointing towards an upcoming 27-inch iMac Pro, so even saying that it would come in 2023. However, most of these reports are quite old, and some sources are even saying that Apple has no plans to release an iMac Pro in the near future. It is definitely more lucrative for Apple to offer a standalone desktop alongside their studio display, which combined would actually cost more than the old 27-inch iMac used to cost, but at the same time, offering just one size of the iMac does seem a bit weird to me when almost all the other Macs come with multiple chip options and or sizes. So if anything, we could see a 27-inch or a 32-inch iMac that would launch alongside the M3 chip with the M3 chip as well. Now, for the same price as the iMac, we have the higher-end version of the Mac Mini, which comes with the M2 Pro chip. Now, this chip is actually powerful enough for pretty much anyone doing any type of video or photo work, including longer and more advanced projects. And since we just got the new model back in January, we wouldn't be getting any more updates anytime soon. And same goes for the regular M2 Mac Mini. This would likely not get updated until next year, even if we do get the M3 chip in October. However, it seems like Apple is actually testing the M3 Pro chip already, which according to Mark Gurman has 12 CPU cores, 18 GPU cores, and 36 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the M2 Pro chip has a 12-core CPU and a 19-core GPU, and it can be configured with up to 32 gigs of RAM, meaning that the M3 Pro chip that got leaked is likely the bin version of it, which compared to the bin version of the M2 Pro chip, we would get 2 extra CPU cores, 2 extra GPU cores, and 4 extra gigabytes of memory. And based on this, I would expect the unbinned M3 Pro chip to have a 14-core CPU and a 21 or 22-core GPU. making it a pretty impressive upgrade from the M2 Pro and especially the M1 Pro, as it's not just the core count that has been increased, but also the switch to 3nm would make those cores perform much better. This is likely coming next year. Now, if you have even more cash to spend, you then have the brand new Mac Studio, which starts from $2,000. And with that, you get a binned M2 Max chip with 12 cores for the CPU and 30 cores for the GPU. And this is really the best configuration for any creative professional, as you essentially get roughly the same performance as the previously unbinned M1 Max model, minus 2 GPU cores, but with 2 extra CPU cores. As a whole, Apple teases a 1.8 times faster CPU performance from the M2 Max model, up to 3.6 times better GPU performance, and up to 4.4 times extra machine learning performance. So really, this new M2 Max Studio would be insanely powerful for any type of use case, including 3D modeling and rendering, app development, data manipulation, and so much more. And on top of all of these performance improvements, this year we also get a higher tier RAM option of 96GB compared to 64. We also get an updated HDMI port that supports 8K and also a refresh rate of 240Hz. We also get Wi-Fi 6E as opposed to Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.3 as opposed to 5.0. Although personally, I would suggest maybe getting a refurbished M1 Max model instead for just $1,529. But if you do need that extra bit of performance, then the M2 Max is a pretty nice device to get this year. And for those of you who need even more performance, you can now bump the chip to the brand new M2 Ultra. And this is really Apple's most powerful chip to date, with literally double the performance of the M2 Max, with up to 24 CPU cores, 76 GPU cores, as well as up to 192GB of RAM. The bin version does start at $4,000, and you will have to pay $5,000 for the full 76-core GPU option. And really, when we tested the M1 Ultra model, we didn't really see that much of an improvement in our workflow, just as Final Cut Pro wasn't really taking advantage of all of those extra cores. But of course, if your workflow does actually need that much power and you have the apps that take advantage of all of those cores, then according to Apple, this model is now 3.3 times more powerful CPU-wise than the M1 Ultra, and 6.1 times more powerful GPU-wise. But where it starts getting really weird is with the new Mac Pro. This is Apple's very first Apple Silicon Mac Pro, meaning that right now, their entire Mac lineup runs on Apple Silicon. Yeah, no more Intel models left. However, this Mac Pro starts from $7,000 and comes with the same M2 Ultra chip as this new Mac Studio that costs $4,000. So what does $3,000 extra give you? Well, you're mostly paying for extra metal. And I mean it. The Mac Pro is 20 or so times larger in volume than the Mac Studio. The Mac Studio fits in your backpack, while for the Mac Pro, you'll need to bring in your car. And yes, the cooling system might be a bit better on the Mac Pro, but all in all, what you're really paying for are for those 7 PCIe slots and for more ports. And in terms of ports, you get 8 Thunderbolt ports instead of 6 on the Mac Studio, you get 2 HDMI ports instead of 1, and 2 10GB Ethernet ports also instead of 1. And of course, thanks to those PCIe slots, you can add more expansion cards for more 10GB ports, more HDMI ports, more USB-A ports, whatever you need. But unlike the Intel model, you won't be able to add more RAM or external GPUs, although 2 SATA ports are still present, so you would be able to add hard drives or SATA-based SSDs if you really want to do that. And another thing to note here is that even if you add HDMI expansion cards, you won't be able to connect more than 8 monitors, which is the same number as the M2 Ultra Max Studio due to the limitations of the chip. The Intel model did not have this limitation, as you could simply just add more GPUs, each of which supported around 6 displays. All in all, I feel like the only reason why this Mac Pro exists is for Apple to please their user base that was asking for an Apple Silicon Mac Pro, even if that user base might not necessarily be buying this new Mac Pro. As for pretty much anyone else out there, buying a Mac Studio is a much better option. Plus, you can still add external 10GB ports just by buying external Thunderbolt expansion cards. We'll see what happens when the M3 Ultra chip comes out, if Apple would redesign the Mac Pro and give it a proper treatment with Apple Silicon GPU modules, or if they would just discontinue the Mac Pro entirely. And on the MacBook side, we now have the new 15-inch MacBook Air, which we've actually covered in depth in a separate video right here. And Apple has also dropped the price of the M2 13-inch Air by $100, whilst also keeping the old M1 model around, which is quite interesting. But both the 15-inch and the 13-inch should be getting the M3 chip alongside the new iMac, so personally I would just wait for that. as we would likely also see an improved battery life on top of the performance improvements and better thermals. And when it comes to the MacBook Pros, the odd one here is the 13-inch M2 model, as it costs the same as the 15-inch Air, and unless you really need that active cooling fan, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. The 14 and 16-inch are great options for anyone needing a ton of performance on the go, and with the old M1 Pro 14-inch being discounted, well, that is an even better option now. The M3 Pro and the M3 Max variants of the MacBook Pros won't be launching until next year, of course, with the specs that we've just discussed earlier in the video. And that's Apple's 2023 Mac lineup. Aside from the Mac Pro and the 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro, all Macs are great options this year. So yeah, feel free to check out our other recent WWDC 2023 videos. I'm Daniel, from ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.